What's up guys, Diego here from ProNDC. Welcome to another ESO build video. So in today's video I want to show you the Stamina Templar PVE DPS update for the Dragonbones DLC. We switched some things around with gear, but the rest is pretty much the same. And Stamina Templar, in my opinion, currently probably the buggiest class in the game. Like currently we have some bugs with the jabs not working. Like you press them, I think it even uses up your resources, but you don't see an animation and you don't deal damage, and then the damage like half a minute later or like 15 seconds later it just like deals damage out of nowhere. It's completely retarded, and because of that you cannot do skeleton tests. The DPS test you saw in the beginning was from last week. I already did tests last week, and I wanted to do some further testing on the class and switch some stuff around, try different setups and see what is more effective. And the test from last week was without buggy jabs. So currently this skill is buggy. This skill, Power of the Light, is still buggy because Dynamax isn't able to fix it for I don't know what reason. They said they're gonna fix it, they didn't, and it costs me and of course other Templars between like, I don't know, something between like 1 to 2.5k single target DPS, and that's retarded because Stamina Templar could actually be relatively strong. Not as strong as Stamina Nightblade, of course, but might even like get like to or be like the second strongest stamina class, probably, I don't know. And because of these bugs, it's just not happening, and that's really unfortunate. Anyway, let's hop into stats. Oh wait, sorry, let's hop into stats. So I'm currently a Red Guard. Basically the only race that I recommend for Stamina Templar PvE DPS is Red Guard. You might run into some sustain issues, and the Red Guard passives really help. On top of that you have some extra recovery from the Red Guard, 10% more max stam, so that's really cool. We have all points into stamina. If you think your HP is a little bit too low, you can go with one heavy piece. Works. Then you have like 16.9k or so, like around 17k, or just put like some points into health, or go with a health glyph on one piece. I prefer just to go with 7 medium for sustain reasons, and yeah, that's pretty much it. We use the Boremondo Stone for increased weapon damage. You can see like we have more than 4k unbuffed weapon damage, and we actually wear another set that's not showing in the stats. I will get to that when I talk about gear. Use max health, max stamina food, and we are a vampire, so vampire gives us more recovery. More recovery here. The undeath passive, you don't need to be a vampire, but it surely helps, to be honest. And there's not a lot of trials where you cannot run a vampire, and even if you have a lot of fire damage in, I don't know, in Ethereal Archive or in Halls of Fabrication at the 4th and 5th boss, like even stage 4 vampire was not that much of an issue. from my experience. Just like, I don't know, I trust my healers. Anyway, let's hop into the gear sets. So currently, for a monster set, I'm wearing VERBINDUNG because VERBINDUNG is just like the strongest option. But I only wear it on certain bosses. There's a lot of bosses where I instead go with Stormfist, which is the set here. And if we wear Stormfist, you can see our weapon damage drops a little bit. It's not a lot. It's just like 150 weapon damage around that. And Stormfist adds some extra recovery. And I use Stormfist basically on trash because Stormfist is stronger on trash. The extra recovery is also pretty nice on trash. And on top of that, there's some bosses where you cannot where the hitbox is so small that only one of the VERBINDUNG spores hits the boss. For example, like in VHOF, the first boss has a really small hitbox, so Stormfist is stronger. But on all bosses where at least 2 of the spores can hit the boss, VERBINDUNG will outperform Stormfist. For example, I think in VHOF it's the 3rd boss and the final boss where you should use VERBINDUNG. Then on Valarial, of course, I'm not sure if the Foundation Stone Atro in AA has a larger hitbox. Rakat has a little bit of a larger hitbox where you can use it. Like I switch around Stormfist and VERBINDUNG a little bit. The results were pretty similar. And yeah, there's a few bosses where you can use like where multiple spores of VERBINDUNG can hit. So it's up to you if you want to go with Stormfist or VERBINDUNG. If you don't have any DLCs, just go with Stormfist. It's probably the best option here. The first 5-piece set that we use, which is farmable, because like this is like really easy to get set up and it's really strong. Like you can see it for yourself. I have gameplay on the channel from this patch and it was really, really strong. It's Automaton. So there's like this unique necklace. I'm not sure if it drops in Dark Shade 1 or 2. I think it's 2. And you just have to, or 1, I'm not sure. The big Netch boss, like one of these, either in 1 or 2, he can drop this unique piece. It's an Automaton necklace. Then of course the 2 rings. So you get weapon crit, stamina, weapon damage, and your physical damage abilities get an additional 391 weapon damage, which is insane. Like this is really a lot. As I said, like it's not showing in the stats here, but it's a lot. And we only have physical damage abilities, which is nice, except for Poison Injection. Poison Injection is the only one ability that is not physical damage. But you still have a ton of base weapon damage, of course. So Poison Injection, it's not like Poison Injection doesn't deal any damage anymore because we use Automaton. So Automaton is really, really strong on Stamina Templar and on Stamina Sorcerer. And when we use 2 body pieces here, of course, both Divines, so 5 Automaton, and the second 5-piece set that we use is Mechanical Acuity. Who would have thought that? Yeah, Mechanical Acuity seems to be basically the meta setup for every class, but it's just working so well. If you don't have a Mechanical Acuity, it's a craftable set, which needs 6 traits research. You can just go with Hunting's Rage instead. If you go with Hunting's Rage, I recommend to go with 2 daggers. For Acuity here, I use a Near-Known Dagger on the main hand with a poison damage glyph and an infused sword with a weapon damage glyph on the offhand. I don't go with an axe. The reason for that is pretty simple. The sword boosts my damage. Let me show it to you in the passive here. Twin Blade and Blonde. Each sword increases your damage done by 2.5%. Each axe gives you your melee attacks an 8% chance to bleed enemies for blah 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 physical damage over 6 seconds. While the bleed is relatively strong, it's pretty weak in trials. Like it never procced for me. Like it barely procced. It dealt less than 1k single target in about 90% of the fights. When I was lucky, I got like 1.2 to 1.5k. Even with these extremely short fights. But I don't know, on the Templar, you don't have a lot of abilities that can proc it. I'm not sure. I think like Blood Craze can proc it, but jabs don't proc it, and then you just like have your light and heavy attacks And that's pretty much it. So you don't have a lot of attacks that can actually proc that skill. And that's kind of retarded. I'm pretty sure jabs don't proc it. Like with the low proc rate, it shouldn't be the case. Anyway, so that's pretty much the reason why we don't use an axe. Like, you barely proc the axe bleed, and it's just not worth it in my opinion. And I swapped out the axe for a sword, and all of a sudden I got a few K more single target DPS. Like, I didn't change rotation, I didn't change anything else about the gear, and I suddenly got more DPS. And that's pretty interesting. Like I said, if you go with Hunting's Rage or maybe even Night Mother's Gaze, go with 2 daggers. So otherwise your crit chance will be a little bit too low. Then we use a Maelstrom Bow and Nirnhound here. Last patch I said like Nirn or Precise, but we use Mechanical Acuity. And every time basically Acuity procs and we're on the back bar, we waste the set bonus. Because Acuity, as you can see here, the 5-piece bonus, we get a 15% chance to get basically an extra 100% weapon and spell crit chance for 5 seconds. 18-second cooldown. So every 13 seconds you can proc it. Or like, no, you proc it, then after 13 seconds you can proc it again. And every time this is active, the Precise trait is pretty much useless because we are already at more than 100% crit chance. That's why we go with Nirnhound and of course with double dot poisons on the back bar. So yeah, poison damage, weapon damage, enchantment, Nirnhound Bow, Maelstrom Bow. The setup that I actually wanted to run, because I think it's still a tiny bit stronger, is 5 Automaton on the body and then 5 Vicious Ophidian. Like, you have incredibly good sustain, but I need a second VO dagger. Without the second VO dagger, we sit at like 61% weapon crit, and that's just like too low in my opinion. I have an axe and a dagger, but I just wasn't lucky enough to get another dagger. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like 5 Automaton and 5 VO would be the set that I'd prefer, but this one is easier to get and it's still really strong. Yeah, that's pretty much it for gear. So let's hop into skills. So our main damage ability is Biting Jabs. It's currently extremely buggy. I tried out different things, like I put Luminous Shards here instead of Deadly Cloak because I don't really need Deadly Cloak in a lot of situations. Just for the passive, for Piercing Spear, increases your critical damage done if you have an Adric Spear ability slotted. And then I went with Shrouded Daggers instead, and it was just even the buggy Biting Jabs, which is like we have the bug in the game since Monday. It's not even been a week that we have that bug, but it's really getting on my nerves. And I lose a ton of damage from that, but still Biting Jabs buggy was more powerful than using Shrouded Daggers, and I even used them with different set combinations and tried to maximize Shrouded Daggers damage, and still buggy Biting Jabs was more powerful. This is our main damage ability. Make sure you stand really close to the target. Otherwise, like if someone is standing closer, like if another enemy is standing closer to you than the boss will only get the additional 1,661 damage instead of the 3,991. Blood Craze, single target dot. I never bothered to remorph it. I think like the dot components is the same. And it's like, I don't know, 100-200 DPS difference, or maybe even less, between Rending Slashes and Blood Craze. And the extra healing is not too bad, to be honest. I just never really bothered like remorphing, and it doesn't matter which morph you want to use. I think like Rending Slashes isn't even leveled on this character, so I just went with this one. Then we have Deadly Cloak. There's fights where I slot Deadly Cloak just in case, like usually in the past I used this skill every rotation. Now I make it situational. Like if I know, okay, there's a lot of AoE damage incoming, I cast it. If not, I just go with 2 times Biting Jabs. Usually I will get to the rotation after the skills. Usually I cast like a heavy attack into Biting Jabs and light attack Deadly Cloak, light attack Power of the Light and Bar Swap. But what I do then instead, if I don't need Deadly Cloak, I do 2 times Biting Jabs, like heavy attack Biting Jabs, light attack Biting Jabs, and then Power of the Light into a Bar Swap. If I have enough stamina, I don't even do a heavy attack into biting jabs. I just do 2 light attacks, like light attack, biting jabs, light attack, biting jabs, and then power of the light. If you don't need Deadly Cloak at all because you feel very safe and you have you trust your healers, what you can do instead is just like go with Expert Hunter here. So you get some additional weapon damage on the front bar because of the passive here. Increase your weapon damage by 3% for each fighter's skill ability slotted. So yeah, if I don't need that, I just go with Expert Hunter. Then we have Rearming Trap for -4s, of course, and that's a pretty decent single target dot. Then Power of the Light, the second really extremely buggy skill. Like I hate that skill. It reduces the physical and spell resistance of your enemy, -4s, -fracture, -breach, I'm sorry. And it deals damage after 6 seconds. But this skill is so extremely buggy. In my best parses, my best fights, like it went off like 2 or 3 times, and it's just so frustrating. Like you can't even imagine how frustrating it is. Let me show you. Where is it? Was this one yeah? Like this one was like around 56k single target. Power of the Light went off 3 times. This was my strongest fight. Power of the Light went off 5 times. You can see like usually it should deal like more than 2k single target DPS. Like I casted it 14 times, and out of the 14 times it missed 9 times. And it's not because I recasted too early, it's because the ability is buggy as hell. And it's really frustrating because on the skeleton you see it casting 6 times and went 11 times, sorry, and it went off 11 times. It's working on the skeleton. It's just like in trials, it's buggy, and we tried to figure out what the reason is, and we can't find a solution to make this ability work, and it's so frustrating. Anyway, buggy skill, but you need it for the extra resistance debuff. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Then Flawless Stormbreaker, which we never really use. We only have it for the 5% extra weapon damage, and then of course Slayer also an additional 3%. What we use on single target fights is Ballista, of course. Ballista is so insanely strong, especially if Acuity procs and it crits the whole time. Really strong. Then we have Repentance. So Repentance, I used to go with Vigor. I was like, well, I used VO last patch. I don't need Repentance. It's completely useless. But now with the with a lot of fights having a lot of adds, Repentance is really strong because I can use more light attacks. I don't have to do heavy attacks all the time like last patch. I can actually get back stamina and heal some people in my group with Repentance and be able to do more light attacks, and that's really cool, especially with the better ARP and shard synergies now, which is so amazing. Like sustain isn't really an issue anymore, and you can play light attack rotations on so many different classes. Like you don't really play a rotation anymore. You try to yeah, be a little bit more flexible. Try to adapt the casting of your skills to the situation. Like if you have a lot of stamina, if you're sitting at like 60-70% plus, just try to go with light attacks. And if you're dropping below like 50-40%, go with heavy attacks again until you're back up. And if there's additional adds that die, just use Repentance and you should have a ton of stamina again. So that's pretty cool. Then Razor Cut drops, of course, big AoE dot. Then we have Luminous Shards, which I use also on trash sometimes, or when I have to block on the back bar, I just throw Luminous Shards because it costs Magicka. And we have the Burning Light passive here, and it can proc from that too, and it scales off of weapon damage and max them. Also, we need the Adric Spear ability for Piercing Spear. Then we have Poison Injection. Poison Injection, really good single target dot. As I said, Automaton doesn't buff it, but it's still really strong. And then we have Endless Hail. Strongest ability for stamina users, and yeah, procs on Maelstrom Bow. For trash, I have a little bit of a different setup. I used this one here. It's the same gear setup, but I replaced Ballista with Solar Prison because this one is actually really strong. Yes, it's magic damage, but keep in mind, guys and girls, this ability here is an ultimate, so it scales off of my max stats or of my better stats. It scales off of my stamina and my weapon damage. That's why Solar Prison is really strong in terms of AoE DPS. If you have like huge stacks, try to put down the Solar Prison, and they get Major Maim, reducing the damage done by 30%. That is really cool. So you reduce the damage taken for your allies by another 30%, and that's really nice. Then I replaced Rending Slashes with Steel Tornado. I always go with Deadly Cloak and Trash because it deals AoE damage and reduces the incoming damage, especially in those big stacks and VMOL and stuff like that. That's really nice. And I just spam Steel Tornado like a madman. I don't even go with Biting Jabs because Steel Tornado is so stronger, and it has an execute component, like deals up to 100% more damage based on each percentage of their missing health. And then, like, if I'm low on stamina, I just use Repentance because there's like dead corpses everywhere. I use Repentance, I heal myself, I heal my allies, and I get back stamina. I can just go on and put down Hail, Caltrops, and Luminous Shards. I never use Poison Injection, actually. Only if we have to focus, like, I don't know, like a Flash Render or a Dramata Sun Eater, or one of the Dwemospheres in VHOV, like we have to focus something, or the capacitors. I just use Poison Injection there, but on nothing else. Just put down the AoEs and try to spam AoE as much as possible. Yeah, that's for Trash. Let's get into champion points first before I talk about the rotation. So we have 28 in the Warlord, 4 into Sprinter, because I actually sprint a lot at some points. 76 Tenacity, 56 Mooncalf, 28 Tumbling, 48 Shadowboard. The red tree here, this is VMOL CP, so I have 81 Ironclad, 20 into Spell Shield, 23 into Hardy, 76 L Defender, 13 into Thick Skin, because we don't have a lot of dot damage there. 27 to Quick Recovery. For the blue tree, I currently have 56 Mighty, 56 Thaumaturge, 61 Precise Strikes, 23 into Piercing, and 44 into Mastered Arms. Remember, like we have 23 into Piercing because we actually need some extra penetration on Trash, because not every mob will be debuffed by Alkosh, and then of course like Crusher, Alkosh uptimes are not at 100%, so you need some extra penetration to compensate that. Going with around 21 to 23 should be like the sweet spot, to be honest. But talk to your group, like make sure you have all the necessary debuff sets, and then you might have to put some more points into Piercing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So for the rotation, it's pretty simple. Let's let me oh yeah, with cloak here. So rotation, pretty simple. Before the fight, of course, I buff up with Deadly Cloak all the time. So what I do then is basically Trap is down first. On the back bar, I always cast Hail, Caltrops, Poison Injection, and if I have my ultimate ready, I use the ultimate at the end before into a bar swap, and then I put down Light Attack, Trap, Light Attack, Power of the Light. So it basically looks like this: Hail, Caltrops, Poison Injection, Ultimate, Light Attack, Trap, Light Attack, Power of the Light, Heavy Attack, Blood Craze, Heavy Attack, Jabs, then Light Attack, Deadly Cloak, Light Attack, Power of the Light again, and then again Hail, Caltrops, Poison Injection, Light Attack, Trap, Light Attack, Power of the Light, Heavy Attack, Blood Craze, Heavy Attack, Biting Jabs. And you saw Biting Jabs didn't work here because they're buggy as hell. So last patch after bar swap, we always use the Heavy Attack into a trap, but we don't use that anymore because we have better sustain with the improved synergies, and we get a tiny bit of a better uptime on Power of the Light. So that's basically the rotation. It's so simple. And as I said, whenever my stamina pool is high, I just go with jabs 2 times. You know, like this, like Heavy Attack, Blood Craze, Heavy Attack, Biting Jabs, and then light attack biting jabs. And then again, power the light into bars up. That's what I do if I don't need Deadly Cloak. So guys, that's the build. Probably a little bit longer than I wanted it to be. But anyway, I hope you will have fun with this build. Standard Templar is a pretty fun class to play, to be honest. But it is buggy. I really hope that ZeniMax will show Templar some love at some point in the future. And yeah, that they make Templar great at some point. So anyway, guys, if you liked the video, make sure to hit the like button. If you do not want to miss any more ESO content, make sure to hit the sub button. I'd really appreciate it. And I hope to see you next time. So until then, bye bye.